Welcome to Vision to Venture, the podcast where we talk to leaders in the tech world. In each episode, we chat with entrepreneurs, tech experts, and leaders within the tech space to hear their stories. So, if you're curious about tech, starting a business, or just want to hear inspiring stories, this podcast is for you. Make sure to follow and subscribe to never miss an episode. Let's get started. Welcome to Vision to Venture. Today, I am joined by Felix Kunzweiler, co-founder and CTO at Hema.to. Hema.to have created the world's first software service to help automate leukemia diagnosis using AI. Felix joins us today to talk about his journey before Hema.to, about starting and growing the company, and the vision that he has for the future. So welcome to the podcast, Felix. It is absolutely wonderful to have you on.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk a bit about my vision for the company and in general, like where AI can have a big impact on healthcare.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's going to be something that we'll definitely get into in a little bit more detail. So I think first things first, it'll be really helpful to learn a little bit sort of about your background. So from my understanding, your background is kind of more in the physics and data analysis side of things. So how did this actually shape your approach to building a company like Hemato, and why specifically healthcare diagnosis?
So physics is basically provided me a really good foundation in understanding complex problems and really breaking them down to their fundamentals. And by doing that, really understanding how you can work with first principles and how you can take a big problem like leukemia diagnosis and can work that out how you want to solve this and how you want to approach this. And in physics, you learn not only like the understanding complex problems, but also pattern recognition, finding how to find signals in data. And I did some work in astronomy for some time, and it's actually quite interesting that astronomy and medical diagnosis are actually not so far apart from how they are done at the end, because at the end you're still processing some signals, and on one end it might be like light coming from a distant star, and on the other side it's like cellular patterns and analyzing light that's emitted from cells in these devices. And actually the fundamentals of these instruments is actually quite similar, and also the mathematical foundations that you use for analyzing such data. And at the end, I really was looking for an area where there is a lot of impact and where really this impact meets also a technical, very challenging problem. So this is also what really motivated me in getting into this field.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I suppose there's a lot of sort of crossovers with things when you have sort of a technical background like that. And obviously before Hemato, you built another startup, I believe, called Res Mechanica. Is that correct? So what lessons did you actually take from this kind of first startup that actually directly influenced how you approached creating Hemato?
Yeah, so Res Mechanica was essentially like a testing ground for various different approaches for using automation technologies. Like we really looked into automation as a service, and one of the early prototypes of Hemato was actually built inside the previous company. But we were working on like different projects, and some were also like AI-driven personalization systems using reinforcement learning, and some of the key takeaways we had there that we really needed to focus on something. Like we had some success with some of these different products, and during a pitch competition where we won actually the first prize at Start and Spread, there we really noticed, okay, we really want to focus on Hemato, and building a medical product really requires dedication. And healthcare is not something that you can take lightly. Like it's a heavily regulated space.
Yeah.
And building a compliant platform for flow cytometry is not something that you can just do on this as a side project. So that's why we really decided we really want to focus on this, spin it off as its own separate company, and transfer the IP. And I think what it taught to me personally is that sometimes you also need to let go of some good ideas in order to pursue the great ones. So you can really focus on something where you can have the full dedication, where you can put your heart in, and then really give maximum effort that you can do. And I think on the technical side also, we did bring some AI technologies to production systems, like building out the full MLOps stack from like data to production use with like short response times and all of that. So I think also on the technical aspects, we validated quite a few different ideas on how to build up such stack that we can then apply to the different field of leukemia diagnostics.
Yeah, no, for sure. That makes a lot of sense, to be fair. And also, so I understand that sort of your main aim is to actually achieve sort of a zero error rate sort of in leukemia diagnostics, like you just mentioned. So how does your AI kind of ensure such high accuracy? And what sort of challenges do you actually face in reaching this goal specifically?
Yeah, so I think for the medical space, it's heavily regulated by both like FDA and the IVDR, and also with the new AI Act coming into place. And I think there you really need to make sure that the models you're building and the approaches you're pursuing have no bad impact on the patient, like that there's no risks and no harm involved. And that's also why we think about the AI systems not as something that will replace a human, but it's something that will augment a human, will help the human to make the better diagnoses. And so the idea is really to, by visualizing the data and giving insights into the data such that the expert, the diagnostician, can understand the subtle changes in, for example, the phenotype of some cell populations or some slight changes. They can get the trust in the AI. So we want to build, a trustworthy and compliant AI, and that also really seemingly integrates into their clinical workflows. So it doesn't help them by just having a black box model that gives some prediction and then they trust in it or not.
Yeah.
But you really want to give them a workflow tool that really solves their challenges that they have and that they can really rely on. And so there's multiple aspects involved that are very important there. I think one key aspect is actually the data that you're using. So we have built out a very sophisticated data annotation process and quality ensuring process to basically make sure that we have gold standard data that goes into our models. And because at the end, this data is what drives at the end your predictions. So this data has to be really good. And the second is also the way how we train the models, how we build the models and have full traceability there, and translating it into the language of the human so that they can understand what the AI gives out and they can build the trust. I think this is really key to it, because at the end, what we want to have is a zero error rate in the combination of the diagnostician, of the medical professional, in combination with the AI. So they can use the insights from the AI to at the end make the best possible diagnosis, because this is really when we can have also an impact on the patient and we can give them or they can get the right treatment at the right time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And this episode is sponsored by Enigma. Enigma help connect machine learning and software engineering talent with groundbreaking opportunities in the field of AI. So, whether you're a company searching for exceptional tech talent or an individual seeking that perfect role, Enigma is your go-to solution. Thank you to Enigma for sponsoring Visions of Venture. As well as that, you guys are obviously creating a company that is massively impactful sort of for society and has the chance to be. And how do you measure sort of Hema.to's impact actually beyond the business success side of things?
Yeah, for sure. So I think, of course, the business is quite important as a startup. So this is something that you always need to look into. But I think there's also some other aspects that are quite key for us to track. One of it is, of course, the time saved in diagnosis. So the less time a doctor needs to make a right diagnosis, the more time he has to also be with the patient, or also give the diagnosis back to the patient so the treatment can start. So time saved in the actual clinical workflow is something that also has a direct impact on the patient. But beyond that, I think there's also a huge shortage in specialized hematologists right now. And this is something that with a tool like ours, as we speed up workflows, actually the labs have a better chance in coping with the high demand that they have. And also with all of the new younger professionals coming in, they can actually also learn from such system that we are building. Like we are explaining them in the system where are the key aspects to look out for in order to make the right diagnosis. So we're actually guiding them and helping them. So also for them, it's quite useful for a medical professional that doesn't have the 20 or 30 years of experience, but maybe just 5 or 10. So they can actually have guidance in especially the hard cases or very rare cases. And also when it comes to like early detection of disease, we are trying to push the boundaries on the sensitivity of our algorithms. And I think this ultimately can also help to get to a diagnosis much earlier than would be usually possible. And also by saving costs for the healthcare systems, this money can actually be applied to other areas, or also some of the measurements could be done in a routine fashion when the costs are actually not the driving factor.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And they're definitely all things that I think, yeah, set you apart a bit. So, is there anything else, that what kind of sets you guys apart from other companies specifically, by using sort of AI in healthcare diagnosis? Because it's quite a specific thing that you guys are doing.
Yeah, so I think with our product or with our platform, we really think about the workflow as a whole.
Mm.
So really from the raw measurements to the final diagnosis to the final report that goes back to the treating doctor. And we're trying to help the entire workflow in the lab and augment it by AI. So there's a lot of manual steps involved and a lot of tedious work that can actually be alleviated and improved by using AI.
Mhm.
And there's also a lot of information actually hidden in the data because it's so high dimensional that isn't accessed by a human typically. And this is something where the use of algorithms and the use of models can actually help quite a bit to get these insights out of the data. And we're always thinking about the combination of the diagnostician, of the medical expert in combination with the AI and the product, so that basically all of the manual steps that we do or that have to be done in the typical workflow, that we can help them by using models, by using algorithms, or by just some simple digitalization of the process, to then at the end, give them a full workflow tool that they can do everything that they need for their diagnostic workflow. And I think this always has to come with with compliance, like in a regulated environment with IVDR and FDA and so forth. This is something where you have to think about compliance as one of your key stakeholders when you're building such a company. It's not something as an afterthought. You're building a product and then at the end you put a layer of compliance on top. You really have to think about compliance from the get-go. If not, you will not meet these heavy regulations that have been getting quite more strict. But I think also by implementing compliance in your process from the get-go also helps you to then at the end build a better product that is both more compliance, more safe, but also better for the patient at the end.
Yeah, yeah, it's incredibly complex, isn't it? But I think, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, no, that's really interesting. So thank you for that. And just to kind of change topics a little bit, obviously you are the co-founder and CTO at Hema.to. So from that side of things, when it's kind of come to scaling a startup, obviously that's massively kind of challenging and yeah, it has, it can change the dynamic of a business, like rather than just working within it. So what have you found kind of Hema.to has kind of grown with? And has that worked for a small team differently than it has for when your team's been growing? Has there been sort of any difference between that at all?
Yeah, there's definitely quite a bit of difference that you notice when you grow the team. I think at the beginning, when you start with just a few people, basically you have team members wearing multiple hats, and then
Yeah.
the alignment just happens naturally in their head. And when you then move on to hiring specialists or having specialists on the team that can really take on these key responsibilities, you need a different process to basically then handle these interconnected roles. when it's not just one person taking care of multiple things.
Yeah.
And while at the same time you still want to maintain this agility that you have as a startup, that you can really just take quick decisions, you can move fast, you don't want to spend all your time just in meetings on alignments. So like this trade-off on having specialists involved for the different areas, aligning them, but at the same time still having a high pace or a high cadence of working. I think it's definitely something that took quite a bit of time to getting adjusted to. And I think one of the biggest shifts was also then how we approach product discovery and planning, and how we ensure that basically everyone just has the right ownership of what they're doing. So we are implemented, for example, OKRs, and work much more goal goal driven and outcome orientated, to basically give the individuals the ownership, because these are the experts. Like, this is why you hired them. So you also want that they have at the end really the impact on the product and on the company. And I think this is just something that you want to establish a process where you still have this entrepreneurial spirit in the entire company when you're still small, but also getting a bit of the structure involved also for things like compliance. It's you kind of have aspects of a large organization, of a large corporate, but you put it into a startup. And trying to find like this balance between the two domains, I think, is something that is complex or is challenging. But I think we have made quite a bit of progress there. And also, as part of our team is fully remote, also in having a remote culture involved, shaping the communication in a way that basically everyone has access to the right information, and then also finding a good balance between like the async work, so everyone can just push their own domains further, but also some meaningful connections that we have during on-sites, to also get this like personal feeling and this connection to your peers. I think it's actually quite important. And so I think this is something that we have embraced from the beginning. And while it was challenging at the beginning, now it's actually one of our strengths, that we see that having this culture established, having these processes, also helps us to move faster now.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess sort of, I assume with that, your actual role has sort of changed a bit too over the time. So I guess, what would you say your sort of biggest hurdle in going from an actual sort of hands-on software engineer into a sort of a CTO actually managing and growing a team has been?
Yeah, I think my shift to more a strategic CTO is something that has been both challenging but also quite
Yeah,
rewarding. And I think like one of the biggest shifts is probably at the beginning, I was just building the product myself or with a few colleagues. And now I'm mainly focusing on enabling others to build it effectively and efficiently. And this at the end meant I had to develop quite a different set of skills. And instead of writing code, I'm now much more focused on code reviews, on mentorship, on strategic planning. And I think for me, something that has always been important to still maintain a deep understanding of our code base. Even though if I'm not involved in the actual development, I still have quite a good mental model of how our entire product works.
yeah,
And I think this has been proven quite crucial for also onboarding new team members, because I can, both guide them on how our systems work and how we want to, like how we do development, but also why we took some architectural decisions in the past. Like sometimes you do like a simple architecture to move fast, but also keeping in mind that we want to move to something bigger at the end.
yeah,
And I think also having this ability to really share this knowledge with the team, mentoring other members, I think is something that has been a big shift for me. And now I focus much more also on finding and addressing inefficiencies that we have in our development process, see where there's maybe some friction, where we can improve, and then at the end just really setting goals so we can align, we can have the focus on building the product we have. And I think this is at the end really one of the key responsibilities of a CTO, to really see that we are moving fast as a company.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, kind of on the same lines, but to shift slightly, you guys have gone through sort of multiple funding rounds, I believe. And so from your perspective, sort of what advice would you actually give to other founders about sort of, I guess, building relationships with investors, especially in niche industries such as healthcare?
Yeah, I think we are in a space on the intersection between healthcare and AI, and I
Yeah,
think both of them are actually quite complex topics. And I think what proved for us is that it's actually important to also have investors that understand what it means to be in such a domain. And I think finding these right investors is goes much beyond just securing capital. You really need partners into building such a transformative product, and also to have the long breath that it takes for like operating in this regulated landscape of healthcare. And so I think for especially at the early stages, the most valuable investors were the ones that not only brought money to the table, but also brought some expertise in different domains, or really had a strong network in the industry that could really help us. Also both on like regulatory challenges, but also how to, for example, what are best practices of using AI in other industries and so forth. Um, and I think as the company matures, in the beginning, like we did benefit tremendously from like the hands-on advice of the investors. And at the end, like as the company matures, it's then much more on like strategic advice, in which areas you want to move in, and more on a higher level. But I still think that really good mentorship, and relationships to the investors is actually very important, because at the end they are your partners. You're not working against them,
yeah.
even though it might feel like in some of the in the early stage fundraisings, when you're just pitching, it might feel like they're not on your side, but at the end they are your partners. They're giving you money, they put trust in you, and they also want to see the company grow. So I think it's important to really align with them and work together with them, because only then you can really achieve the high goals that you set for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously with these sort of investors, and I believe kind of also sort of business angels, um, specifically with medical backgrounds, did it influence your company's growth and direction specifically by picking those? Was that something that kind of affected you guys?
Yeah, for sure. So some of our angels and early investors really had expertise in the medical domain. And I think what they brought in was both helping us understand, how is AI perceived in the medical space? Like, how are they envisioning working with AI?
Yeah,
And also getting trust, and yeah, knowing how the doctors think about the use of AI. I think was one of the key
yeah,
things that they brought to the table, but also understanding what are the pain points our customers have in the laboratories, in their workflows. I think this is also something where they contributed quite a bit in the early days. Um, so I think, yeah, it was definitely very beneficial for us in the company, and really set us up for success.
perfect. And I guess we'll go on to sort of a final question in terms of yourself. So if you could actually go back and give yourself any advice, which was at the start of your journey with Hema.to, what would that advice be, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, good question. So I think something that it's quite important is that you have to embrace the complexity of healthcare AI rather than trying to simplify it. And I think understanding and working with these regulatory frameworks from the start, while challenging, sets you up for long-term success.
Mhm.
And I think also thinking about processes, how you work internally. As you grow, you have to reinvent the company and the processes multiple times. So I think also putting the right focus there, and trying to be ahead of your actual growth can be quite helpful, because then you can also really focus on product development, and can really get the most out of the team you have, of the expertise you have internally. And I think this also sort of ties into my shift from like a hands-on developer to CTO. So I think I in some areas I could have started delegating earlier and really more focus on building a strong team culture and building up processes. And even though I enjoyed being hands-on for quite a long time, I think sometimes it can be helpful to dedicate some time to the growth of the company and of the team early on as well. Even though you don't have the big processes yet, I think just thinking about it actually is can be quite important. And I think also as we are building a product that can be so impactful, but in the positive way, but also we want to make sure that it is positive impact that we're creating in the patient. It's also really taking the time to do things in the right way, to really focus on building the right product, um, ensuring that everything works perfectly when you push it out to production environments, to the customers. I think this is something in general in AI, I think or in healthcare, it's quite important. And these are not really regrets I have. I think these are just realizations I had over the past few years with experience. And I think when you adapt quickly enough to these changes, to these things you notice, you can actually grow quite quickly and then really tackle these challenges. And then they're not really challenges anymore. Then it's areas for growth. And I think this is really every challenge we faced so far is also something that has really shaped Hema.to as it is today.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to sort of wrap it up. Obviously, you guys have had a lot of success so far, and it's been really, really interesting hearing you chat a little bit about your background, from your perspective and how you guys have ended up where you have, and a little bit about sort of what goes on and what your thoughts are with that. So, yeah, I think that was that was really great, and I think a lot of people will be able to take a lot on board from that. So, thank you so much for going into some detail about that and for coming actually onto the podcast as well, Felix. It's been fantastic to have you on.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Vision to Venture. If you're listening, make sure to give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching, like and subscribe to listen to more inspiring stories from tech leaders.